Listen carefully because what's unfolding here isn't just messy drama. It's a layered, self-inflicted collapse wrapped in ambition, ego, and one very questionable decision chain. This isn't about random gossip floating around the internet. This is about timing, choices, and a series of moves that, when lined up correctly, tell a completely different story than what most people are seeing on the surface. At the center of it all is Claressa Shields, a world-class athlete, Olympic gold medalist, and someone who has built her public identity on dominance, fearlessness, and the idea that she never backs down from a challenge. Her brand has always been loud, unapologetic, and aggressive. Whether it's inside the boxing ring or outside of it, she's positioned herself as someone who swings first and deals with consequences later. But what happens when that same energy doesn't translate behind the scenes? Because according to the narrative circulating, Claressa allegedly did something that completely contradicts that fearless persona. She prepared for a battle she never actually entered. Not only that, she reportedly initiated it. The claim is that she recorded a diss track aimed at Remy Ma long before Remy even acknowledged her. Think about that for a second. This wasn't a response. This wasn't retaliation. This was premeditated. A move made in advance without a clear trigger, and with a very specific rollout plan in mind. And that's where things start to unravel. Because the story doesn't stop at the track. The real turning point, the moment everything shifted, allegedly came when Claressa decided how she wanted that track to be introduced to the world. Instead of going through traditional music channels or even releasing it independently, she reportedly chose a far more strategic and risky route. She wanted 50 Cent to promote it. Now, on paper, that might sound like a power move. 50 Cent's social media presence is massive. His platform has turned small moments into viral explosions. He's known for amplifying drama, fueling narratives, and sometimes completely reshaping public perception with a single post. But here's the problem. 50 Cent isn't just some neutral megaphone. He has history with Remy Ma. There's mutual respect there, a working relationship, a level of familiarity that anyone paying attention to the culture would recognize immediately. So the idea of using him as the launchpad for a diss aimed directly at her? That's not strategy. That's a gamble with very obvious odds. And according to the version of events being discussed, Claressa didn't send the track herself. She allegedly had Maserati Bud, someone she was working closely with in the studio, deliver it. That decision may have been the most critical mistake in the entire sequence. Because when Bud approached 50 Cent with the request to promote the song, something didn't add up. It wasn't just the content of the track. It was the situation itself. The question reportedly wasn't explosive or dramatic. It was simple. Why are you asking me to post her? That one line, if true, is where the entire narrative shifts. Because it forced a level of explanation that exposed more than just the music. It introduced context. It introduced relationships. It introduced questions that weren't supposed to be part of the conversation. And once those questions were asked, the situation allegedly became less about a song and more about what was happening behind the scenes. From that point forward, everything changes. Because now the diss track isn't just a diss track. It's evidence. It's a timestamp. It's a breadcrumb that leads back to a private situation that was never meant to be public. And suddenly, releasing the song isn't just about music anymore. It's about consequences. That may explain why, despite being completed, the track never surfaced. Because dropping it would have invited scrutiny. It would have forced people to connect dots. It would have raised the exact questions Claressa may not have wanted answered. Questions about her association with Maserati Bud, about the timing of the collaboration, and about the deeper context behind the lyrics themselves. So instead of launching the track, everything reportedly stalled. And while that silence might have seemed like a safe move in the moment, it created a vacuum. A vacuum that Remy Ma eventually filled. Because when Remy finally responded, whether directly or indirectly, it didn't take much. One verse, one appearance, one moment of engagement was enough to shift the narrative completely. Not because of volume but because of timing and confidence. She stepped in when Claressa stepped back. And in situations like this, perception becomes reality. Now the story isn't about who started what. It's about who showed up and who didn't. That's where the criticism toward Claressa intensifies. Because this is someone who has publicly challenged opponents across multiple spaces. someone who has built a reputation on confrontation, someone who has repeatedly emphasized that she's ready for any kind of smoke, verbal or physical. So when an actual moment arrives that calls for that same energy, and there's silence, people notice, and they question it. Not just fans but observers of the culture who understand how these dynamics usually play out. Because in entertainment, especially in hip-hop adjacent conflicts, hesitation often gets interpreted as weakness, regardless of the reality behind it. But there's another layer here that complicates things even further: the idea of motive. Because if you look at this situation from a wider lens, it starts to resemble something bigger than just a personal conflict. It starts to look like a calculated attempt to gain access, to move closer to a different level of visibility, influence, and industry connection. That's where 50 Cent becomes central again. Not as a participant but as a gateway. Because proximity to someone like him isn't just about association, it's about opportunity. It's about being seen in spaces that extend beyond your original field. For an athlete like Claressa, stepping into music, even briefly, could represent an expansion of brand, audience, and long-term relevance. And if Maserati Bud was perceived as a bridge to that world, then the collaboration starts to make more sense. But it also makes the fallout more complicated. Because when ambition intersects with personal decisions, the line between strategy and risk gets very thin. And if that line is crossed at the wrong moment, the consequences aren't always immediate. They're delayed, layered, and often public. That's what makes this situation so fascinating. It's not just about what happened. It's about how each decision led to the next one. A chain reaction where every step seemed logical in isolation, but questionable when viewed as a whole. Start with the studio sessions. Move to the diss track. Then the choice of messenger. Then the choice of platform. Then the unexpected reaction. Then the silence. Each piece on its own might not seem significant, but together, they form a pattern that suggests this wasn't a spontaneous situation. It was a planned one that didn't go according to script. And now everything is stuck in limbo. The track exists but isn't released. The story is known but not confirmed. The tension is real but unresolved. Meanwhile, 50 Cent remains the wild card. Because if there's one consistent trait in his public persona, it's patience. He doesn't always react immediately. He observes. He collects. He waits. And when he does decide to engage, it's usually at a moment that maximizes impact. So the idea that he might be sitting on information, whether significant or not, adds another layer of uncertainty to the situation. Because it means the story isn't necessarily over. It's paused. And in today's media environment, pauses don't last forever. Eventually, something resurfaces. A clip, a comment, a post, a leak. And when it does, it doesn't just restart the conversation, it reshapes it. So where does that leave Claressa? In a complicated position. Her achievements in boxing remain untouched. Her legacy in that space is secure. Nothing about this situation changes what she's accomplished in the ring. But outside of it, the narrative becomes harder to control. Because reputation isn't just built on success. It's built on consistency. On aligning actions with image. On maintaining the same energy across different situations. And when there's a disconnect, people notice. That doesn't mean the story is final. It doesn't mean her narrative can't shift again. Public perception is fluid. It evolves. It changes with time, with new information, and with new actions. But right now, the situation stands as a case study in how quickly things can spiral when strategy, emotion, and ambition collide. It's not just about a diss track. It's about timing. It's about choices. And most importantly, it's about understanding that every move, especially in the public eye, creates a ripple effect. Some ripples fade. Others turn into waves. And occasionally, if enough of them collide at once, they create something much bigger than anyone anticipated. That's what this looks like. Not just drama, but a sequence, a chain reaction. And depending on what happens next, we may not have even seen the final chapter yet.